Welcome to the Entrepreneurial CEO Podcast, where we dive into the real stories behind building and scaling a business. Each episode, we sit down with CEOs, founders, and leaders to uncover hard-won lessons in leadership, systems, and team building. Listen in each week to learn directly from real business leaders who have been in your shoes, had success, made the mistakes, and all of the messiness that comes with building a business. If you're ready to learn from real-world leaders and gain insights you can apply today, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Mike, Claire, nice to have you on.
We are back.
All right. Today's guest is Claire Ferrara, president and third-generation owner of Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. They're one of the most respected HVAC companies in the Twin Cities. Claire took the reins of this 95-year-old family business and has led it into its next chapter with a focus on people, operational excellence, and culture. Claire is a strong advocate for leadership development, which we love, diversity in the trades, and running a business with empathy and intention. Under Claire's leadership, Standard Heating and Air has continued to grow while earning a reputation for both exceptional service and internal team development. Claire, we're super excited to have you here. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
All right. So we have a lot of great questions for you. Before we dive in, maybe just tell the audience a little bit more about yourself or about the business.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm third generation ownership, but I'm actually fourth generation to work in the business, which is pretty cool. So my grandfather started Standard Heating in 1930. And his parents actually worked with him. So that's how we get fourth generation, which is pretty cool. I've taken the business over from my dad and my uncle. And I did grow up around it. Like my bus stop for school was our office. And, I'd come into the office on Saturdays with my dad, but I went away for a while. I went to college. I actually went to trade school. I worked in the corporate world and the nonprofit world. But I ultimately decided that I really liked solving problems and I really liked serving a customer directly. And in working in our business when I was younger, I got to see that what we do is kind of like some art and some physics, and a lot of people stuff. And that's what drew me back. And so I was maybe 19 when I said, hey guys, I want to buy your business someday. And I didn't come back until I was 30.
Wow.
So, spent some time learning about the world because I just kind of knew, and my dad and uncle knew that I would need to go develop other skills if I was going to come back to the business and help it evolve. And so today we're a 130-person residential HVAC business located in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. All we do is retrofit systems for homes. And so we will sell a new system, replace a new system, service it, maintain it. Think things like boilers and thermostats and furnaces, air conditioners, heat pumps, stuff like that.
Wow. Okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So you knew at 19. You knew at 19 that you were one day going to be in or buy the business.
I knew I wanted the opportunity. If I was going to get that opportunity, it was really up to my dad and my uncle, but we worked together and ultimately came up with a plan. We actually hired a family business consultant to help us do it.
Okay.
Smart. Very smart.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of things go sideways when you have different families from the same family in a business. And so it sounds like you guys worked all that out. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it wasn't tough. But one thing that we've been able to hold very clearly is that we are family, we love each other, but inside the walls, we're a business. And we have all these other people who rely on us for a paycheck or customers that rely on us for their service, their warranties, things like that. And so I feel fortunate that I grew up kind of knowing that and learning what that was like. And that's something I give a lot of credit to my dad and uncle for.
Do you have any other family members in the business? Or is it just you at this point?
I don't today,
Okay.
but I do have some other family members who may be interested, and so that excites me because I think it'd be really cool to have some other family partners.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah,
I imagine it being a family business, your third generation, it's 95 years old. Taking that over comes with some sensitivity or maybe challenges that starting from scratch wouldn't have. When you stepped into the role, how did you navigate between or balance between the legacy of the business, keeping what is true and great, and then also doing things your own way?
So legacy is kind of a big word. Yeah, this is a good question, and probably one that anyone who buys a business or steps in, thinks about at some point. I would say, when I first stepped into the role, it was more about what I didn't want to happen. I kind of let other people's narratives dictate what I thought that legacy was going to be, in that everyone loved to quote how many generational businesses fail, right? Or like what the success rate was of being third generation and making it a year or two. And it's like small, it's small. And so I was just like, I need to make my family proud. And how am I going to do that? I'm just not going to screw it up. I am just not going to have the doors closed, right? Like I can't be that generation.
Right.
And I still at the same time had ideas about what I wanted to do different, but that was very much like, this is what the legacy is going to be. It's not going to be that I failed and went bankrupt. So a little bit of time and experience helps, give you more solid grounding, and you gain a little perspective. And pretty quickly I was able to start to do the things that I wanted to do differently. So we have a strong legacy and reputation of being a community-focused business and quality work and being a choice employer. And it's not easy to continue those things. But I knew that in order for them to continue, there was one main thing I wanted to do different. And that was take the people who are in the business, working there, and really start to involve them in the business decisions. Previously, we were a company where, it was like there's two owners, there's president, there's 1 to 3 people who make decisions. And then they just disseminate that information and everybody just does their job. And to me, it was like, that's gotten us where we are. But these are smart people. They work hard. They know a lot. Like, let's bring them in to help make decisions, solve problems, identify issues. Why would we not do that? And so that's a change that I've made that has turned out to benefit us hugely. And now I can look at it and go, the legacy isn't about not screwing it up. It's really about continuing into the future and being solid for a very long time.
That's brilliant. There's so much to comment on what you just did there, but I know your feeling, and I made the opposite mistake. So I bought this company that's 65 years old.
Yeah.
Same thing. My message has always been honor the past, stick to our fundamentals, stick to our foundation, but modernize as we scale the business.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I brought enough people in the beginning to the decision making, or even if it was just feedback from them for decisions. And I think that started to bite me, and I've had to circle back and kind of like re-engage and get alignment on certain things. And sounds like you did it the right way, but I can see how that can go sideways because I screwed up.
Claire, I'm curious, when you started to make that change, you started to include people more or get them in the decision-making process, what happened internally? What did you notice with your people or with the culture? Yeah, I'd love to hear your comments on that.
Well, I would say I don't know that I did it the right way, right? I think all of this is like very iterative, like you're constantly learning ways of doing things. But like people became more bold, right? Like we became aware of things happening we wouldn't be aware of otherwise. We've been able to try some things we definitely wouldn't have tried. There are people who have said that they like working in our environment because they feel like they have a voice. Mm-hmm. So I think we become like a stickier employer in that way, right? And I think it gives people an opportunity to just be more fulfilled. And that also is really a part of building people into leaders, which, I'd like to be a company that builds a bench. We didn't really have a bench before. And we're still working on that, to be fair. I don't know if we've been great about it, but those are some of the kinds of things I've noticed.
I think everybody wants to feel like they have a voice and that they're being listened to. And look, everybody has an opinion, right? They may not be good opinions, but everybody has an opinion and they want to share it. You just mentioned developing people, as the company's grown, how have you developed your people to continue leading or to improve or move up to, from an individual contributor to a manager? How do you do that? And what kind of challenges have you had?
So this is like a large question.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, developing people, I think, is at the forefront of what any or many businesses are trying to tackle today. And I've seen a variety of challenges, and some of them have to do with the people themselves, and some of them have to do with me, or leadership. And so few common things that I run into. I would say it is common, I have noticed, that people can be afraid, right? They come to us with previous work experience or life experience or family experience, whatever that is, because it all feeds into your employee, whether you realize that or not. And they can be afraid of making a mistake, of saying the wrong thing, of asking for help, or of saying they don't know. And all of those things need to happen for someone to be like a high level leader or to make decisions. They have to make mistakes. They have to be able to ask for help. They have to be able to say, I don't know. And so, one of the challenges is creating an environment where you foster it being okay to do all those things. You can't punish failure, especially not when the intent, the work is there, the, thinking is solid. You kind of actually have to reward, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. You have to make it okay to test and try and fail. Additionally, I would say a huge challenge can be me, the owner or the president or any leader. And what I mean by that is that I've realized that I can think that I want everyone to be a leader and that I want them to be a decision maker. And I can believe it, and I can state it and set an expectation, and I can verbally be supportive, but my behavior can undermine that without realizing it. I could put someone in a position to run a project or lead a team, and then I could say, okay, but I want you to bring me the final two options that you come up with to get the outcome we're looking for. And then I'm going to choose between the two. I mean, right there, I'm pulling the rug out from under them if I want them to ultimately lead and for them to make the decision, even though I put them in the role and I gave them the project and I've propped them up in everyone else's eyes. So, that can be a little tricky, and it requires some self-awareness. I would say I have relied heavily on others to help me. I bring in people to coach us and challenge us. We read books, like read a book with your people and discuss it. Like there's a lot of things you can do tactically. But those are some of the biggest challenges, and you really have to create a culture that tackles them.
So how do you make the final decision then? They come to you with two ideas. What do?
You don't. You don't make the decision, right? Like
you have them make it.
Yeah. I mean, that's, if I'm going to make it, then I'm undermining the fact that I want them to be the decision maker, that I want them to, be the leader. And so I have to be okay with it being kind of messy, right? And with them maybe making a decision that I wouldn't make. And so you just have to be okay with not making the decision and letting your people do it.
That's how they grow.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard. It can be really hard.
I like that word. It's messy. Like that's so real life. It's like so many people are like, well, we do this process. And the reality of it is people are messy. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes a business.
I have had to get much more comfortable with that. And if you're going to develop people, you have to be okay with the messy. And I haven't been always. I've often been more of an A-type personality, and that's what got me here. But what's going to give me success in the future, I got to let some of that go. So you got to be okay with the messy.
Like that. Writing that one down.
Do you have, when you're, you guys have a big team and, you're managing the messiness and all that stuff, do you have systems that you use to manage the different teams and just operate the business on a monthly basis or, throughout the year?
Yeah. So this is an interesting question because I think as a business, we're going through an evolution where we're sort of revamping what systems we use. Because I will say, I think we've gotten so entrenched and we must use a system that in some ways that has inhibited our ability to collaborate and trust each other as teams and break down silos and grow. But no system is like chaos. So I will say that we have actually, for a while, we used EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. For people who aren't aware of that, look it up. And that gave us some frameworks for, consistency, right? And discipline. And those were things that, it's not that we didn't have that before, but they all came from one person. And in wanting more people to be involved, we just had to be very clear about, how do we spend our time and who is spending time on what and who's accountable for things. And so no matter what system you use, I encourage you to figure out things that define those items.
We always say the same thing. Whether if somebody says they're using EOS, although we have a different system, we say, great, as long as you're using something, right? It's just important that as a business, you're using a system to operate.
Do you use EO? Do you have like a coach that comes in and works with you on a quarterly basis, or do you guys do it yourself?
Yeah. We've right from the start, it was like, let's not try to do this ourselves. And we've had two different coaches because we worked with one for a while, and then it was like, again, what got us here maybe isn't going to get us there. And so, we haven't been afraid to say, we love you, and now we're going to, get a different perspective. So I think that's been really beneficial.
Oh, good. Yeah.
When you look at the business today, what are your big goals over the next couple of years, and what do you think could get in the way of achieving them?
So there's a very strong outlook, for our industry. I like to tell people, look, we're not recession proof. I don't really know an industry that is, but we are recession resistant in that we deliver goods and services people need. I mean, you want your home to be warm or not freeze, or, just like electricians, plumbers, all that stuff, right? So we're fortunate to be in our industry. And so I think that we have a lot of runway to do a lot of the things that we want. And our next kind of immediate goals really involve expanding our services. So like I mentioned, we are solely focused on residential HVAC, and that's a lot of people focused on one thing. So we'd like to expand the services we offer to homeowners, like electrical, plumbing, those kinds of things. What I think could get in the way, people will say things like economic slowdown and, decline in housing and customer pullback. And yes, those things will affect us. They might slow us down in our pursuit, but I don't think they would stop us. What I think would really get in the way would be leaders, me, my leadership team. If we get to a point where, we're a bottleneck, we're resistant to change, resistant to looking in the mirror, we stop listening to our people's ideas, we start letting fear rule our decisions, like fear of an economic slowdown or fear of what consumers are going to do, or in my industry, fear of private equity, because there's a lot of private equity investment in our industry. And I don't think that needs to be something people are afraid of. But if we let fear really drive us, that's what I think would actually stand in the way.
Hi, if you're a CEO out there who's struggling with focus for your company, aligning your team, accountability, if you're struggling with execution, connecting the dots from where you're at to where you want to be, we've got a great program for you here at MAP. My name is Michael Cato. I'm the CEO. Most importantly, I was a client for 15 years, sold my company to a public company, and then bought MAP so that we can help other entrepreneurs with this specific problem. We're a 60-year-old company. We've worked with 170,000 individual executives and CEOs. We've worked with 15,000 organizations. This is what we do. Click the link below to learn a little bit more about how people just like you, CEOs, have transformed their business and ultimately transformed their life by running through the MAP system.
Mike, we did a podcast yesterday, and I said it yesterday. It's interesting as we go on, the patterns that emerge, and some of them just keep coming up, and fear just came up like 2 or 3 times in the different episodes, talking about how, what holds people back. It's fear. It's like fear of failure, fear of, all sorts of different fears. Your ego gets in the way, but fear keeps coming up.
Yesterday it came up. We were talking about you asked me, why do entrepreneurs suck at pricing? And the first thing I said is they're afraid to raise their prices.
Yeah.
We talked about it yesterday, but if you're in a room with 50 entrepreneurs and ask them, how many do you think your prices are too low? 45 of them will raise their hand.
Yeah. What's interesting, and the thing is, we are masters of our own destiny. my industry is notorious for this, where it's like a race to the bottom in a slower time of the year. And I constantly
so funny.
am talking to my people about like, we are not going to lead that charge, right? And it is our job to bring the industry up, right? And so like, what does it take to be the right price? Well, okay, we have to believe in the value we're bringing. We have to offer goods and services that people want and need. We have to differentiate ourselves, and we don't have to apologize for that. And that's a really tough mentality, I think, to have. But we also need to educate the consumers, right? Like they need to understand you can't want to support a business that has good benefits and good pay and has expert at what they do and get it really cheaply,
Nope.
And also cheap or expensive is very individual. Like who's to say that that's expensive? So there's a lot of things that go into that, but I think it really does come down to the belief that you deserve to be compensated for the value that you bring. And the only one that can really tell what's appropriate is you, right? So don't be afraid of that, because my God, your whole life gets better when you're the right price. You can offer the benefits, you can recruit the right people, you can solve the customer problems. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's a really good point. I think pricing too low has a lot of negative consequences too, right? Like people view that as you're the cheap option. Whereas, if you have a strong brand and you're delivering value, people don't ask for discounts. They see the value. And so I think that, to your point, not being afraid to price accordingly based on the value that you deliver.
100%.
And this space is aggressive in pricing. Like it's like these private equity roll-ups, a lot of it is based on how do we get to the very tippy top pricing. And so that can be good for business in general, could be bad for the consumer, could be bad for the image of the industry. And it's all across the board. I just have one of my air conditioners broke, and we got pricing anywhere from like $10,000 to $24,000. It's the weirdest thing. Anyways.
It's pretty wide range.
There's like we could probably spend hours just talking about that topic.
I know.
But bottom line is, people need to not be afraid to charge what they're worth. Be the right price. There's an industry group I'm in that really promotes that and has really helped solidify that for me. And do not apologize for it.
Well, Andrew, that's another pattern, by the way. Peer groups.
Yeah.
Getting around other people. There's one thing to be an EO or YPO, which is another conversation, which I've been involved in a long time. But getting around your industry peers, like I know for us in the food delivery business, that's the only reason we survived. And then we bought a lot of them afterwards. But they taught us how to build a business that could buy them. It was pretty weird, but we would have been dead. Anyways, sorry, too excited.
No, it's great. I mean, I wanted to ask, you mentioned leaders, right? And obviously having a super strong team is the key to growing your business, or key to being in business. And if you don't have a good team, you're not going to go very far. Outsider, we work with a lot of people in home services, a lot of clients in home services, but I haven't worked in there. But it seems like there is an issue with skilled traits, with getting great people and finding them, retaining them, et cetera, et cetera. So that could be your technicians. But then I imagine, and I don't know, do you promote from within? Do you then find those great people, make them managers? And so it's just this constant, then you have to backfill. So like, how do you handle that internally? Both, I suppose, the finding great people so that you can continue to grow, but also the promotion of them into managers and teaching them how to do that, because that's a totally new skill.
Yeah. So, oh man, there's a lot to this too. One of the things that I have really come to believe in is like people do not need to be perfectly prepared. So I think for any business, like, there's often a checklist, right? Of like, oh, have this education or this experience or do this for 5 years or whatever. I think we need to start throwing those out. I'm not saying to never have someone have relevant experience, but I think one of the things we got to do is really start expanding who the talent pool is, right? And start to believe that like the future is going to be better than now. And that includes the people that I'm working with. They're going to be better than they are now. And so, with the idea of a shortage of labor, like you really got to start to, I think, open up what you're looking for and who's eligible. I also, believe strongly that as long as there's a set of principles that people believe in, like they have certain values, they're willing to work hard, they learn quickly, those kinds of things, you can teach them to do just about anything, right?
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of success in finding people who have switched careers, or they haven't even gone to school for this, but come work for us and we'll teach you. And that's something that, I know a lot of my peers in this industry are leaning into. When it comes to promoting from within, it's similar principles apply. Stop looking for the most experienced. Now, it's nice to get someone who's a bit more plug and play and 10 years of management experience and whatever.
Right.
But the people who are in front of you are already committed to you. They're bought in. They put in time. They know things someone from the outside wouldn't. And so again, opening up that pool of who you're looking for, I think is pretty critical. It is hard, though, to teach people what it is to manage a department, or, to handle all the people stuff if they've never done that before. And that's where I would encourage strongly that you rely on finding mentors, bringing in a coach, finding some places that have good classes. And I'm not talking college courses, but have good seminars or a series of leadership trainings, things like that you can rely on to help you. Because it is a full-time job just to teach people how to manage and lead.
100%.
It's so funny. Sorry. Where's my book? I got so many books here. My favorite book. Here it is.
Oh yeah, I have that. Yep.
I mean, I think really you just got to read the first section. I think is really good, but it's Gallup finds that quality of managers and team leaders is the single biggest factor in your organization's long-term success. Hello. Yeah. So are you training them?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, and you think of the gamut of things they need to know, there's company policy, there's the work their people are doing. They need to have access to data. Do they have P&L responsibility? And then there's the qualities to just connect with the people and for them to put on good training and and it's there's a lot that someone needs to know. And so finding ways to not overcomplicate it, to have a system that builds, on their knowledge. And again, being willing to let it get messy. You've got to let them fail, ask questions. They need to know that they don't need to know how to do everything on day one. And most of the time people feel that pressure. I better be good at this in my first 30 days or it's not going to work. And you kind of have to relieve that pressure.
That's a great point, having patience. But it's all, it's a big shift, right? If somebody has been successful as an individual contributor, they get that dopamine hit, that reward by doing the work themselves. And then they make a shift. They're no longer supposed to do the work themselves. Now they have to execute through other people. That's a big change. And so you have to, I think patience, as you mentioned, that's really important.
Yes. And, I think about some of my own journey because shifting from, the doing to the leading is a massive shift. And so not everyone's willing to do it. Not everybody actually likes it once they get there. I do think there's this fallacy that being the leader is this grandiose thing and everyone's happy and it's easy, right? And I would say that leadership is actually quite simple, but it's not easy. And it really, truly is not for everybody. And that needs to also be okay.
And that is okay. That is totally okay. I remember at our company, AirServe, we had a guy who was exceptional at his job. He was the top performer. And I think he just thought the natural progression was, I should be a manager. So we're okay, man. And we gave him a shot and he hated it.
Yeah.
And after a while, he's like, I want to go back to the old job. It's okay, that's fine, man. It's not for you. And that's okay. You can go back into your job and, keep killing it. So you're right. Not everybody should be a manager. That's okay.
And we actually have had some employees in that situation where they, were in a management position and ultimately their heart wasn't in that, right? Yeah. And we found the right opportunity for them elsewhere. And I think that's a really strong thing that you can demonstrate as an organization, that it isn't just up or out, right? It really is about finding the place that somebody wants to be and where they can thrive. And so I would encourage people to think about that too, which is a different mentality than probably 15 or 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just finding the right seat on the bus.
Yeah.
So you mentioned looking in different places, unique places. And I have to ask, you have a large percentage of women on the team, which is probably not typical within the space. What have you done to intentionally create that within Standard Heating and Air?
So I would actually encourage people to step back on this for a second. And, I've had an evolution in this. I mean, very clearly I recognized, hey, I was a female in a space that, maybe didn't have as many of me, right? But my evolution has been, I don't want our business or industry just to be good for women. I want it to be good for everybody. Like anybody who can see themselves in this job, like I want people to see themselves in these jobs and in our businesses. And so I would encourage people to kind of step back first and say, what is going to make our business good for anyone, right? As long as they want to be here and they can develop the skills, right? And humans deserve to be well compensated, right? Like humans as a group have certain needs, right? They generally want to be able to have time with family and friends. They want to be able to do things that interest them. They want opportunity to learn and grow. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't anything that we do intentionally. Okay. One of the things that I would recommend right away that people do to be a place where anyone could fit is to change your language. Be conscious of your language. We're an industry that very typically says salesman or assumes the technician is he. Well, just change your language. Salesperson, teammate, technician, right? Like these are not hard things to do. Most people that I talk to don't necessarily, they're not offended that it's salesman, but they notice that they're not included. Right? And so the language you use is a simple place to start, because I could give you a playbook, right? People often want like, what are the 5 or 10 things you can do to recruit more women? And the thing is, our policies, the holidays we celebrate, the language we use, it is a physical manifestation of our values. We are consistent in who we are as managers, leaders, employees in our business with the values we hold and how we show up. And it is seen in the things that we celebrate. It is seen in the policies that we develop. And so you really have to step back and say, okay, how do I make this place good for everyone? Who am I? And am I consistent in those things? And that's where you got to start, because like will attract like once you get there. But I would say it isn't just about women. And then we've ended up attracting a variety of women, and they have been the best fit for our role. We are still looking for the best fit for our roles. There isn't like a quota that we're trying to meet. We just really feel like our mission is to make it good for anyone who could want to be here.
Yeah.
Leveraging all of the talent that's out there.
Yeah. I mean, the future of our industries depends on that, by the way. So, there's a couple ways to look at that. I'm someone who happens to believe that diversity of experience and education and thought and background like really benefits the business. I think you get better problem solving and more ideas. But realistically, the decline in shortage of the workforce, like the talent pool that has traditionally served our industry is diminishing. And so you have to branch out. Like I don't see an option for people if they want to grow their business and they want to have longevity into the future. You've got to look in places that you maybe hadn't before. Yeah. So why would you not start to work to be a business that's good for anyone who wants to be there?
For sure. That's smart. On one of the questions that we like to ask all the people that come on the show, MAP stands for Management Action Program. So we're all about taking action, right? Mm-hmm. And is there something unique that you do there, your company does, system, process, whatever, habits, mm-hmm. that somebody listening could take and implement back in their business to help them improve professionally, personally, whatever?
Sure. That's a really good question.
He's full of those.
I got a lot, I gotta say.
That's why I am just the color commentator.
Okay, it's becoming clear. Yeah, who's the brains here?
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's maybe 2 things that I would maybe say to this. And one is just a very like individual personal recommendation. It's something that I have found has just helped me in my leadership journey. And I have to constantly remind myself of this, but be new at stuff. Find things to be new at. I don't know, learn to golf if you've never played golf. Go, take a dance lesson.
Yes.
Try to read if you've never been really into reading, books, or go on a hike. Like, do something that you don't do and don't really know how to do, because it will humble you and it will remind you what it takes to learn, and you will grow. So I think it's too easy to get complacent as leaders when we've been doing it for a little while and to say, well, we know what it is to be new and we know how to train. And like, we've learned a lot of things. Well, I guarantee you the first time you swing a golf club, if you've never done that before, you're going to feel like an idiot.
Silly. Yeah.
Embarrassing. Right. So, and there are some lessons to be had there about like, well, how are you learning and how are you developing and how did you get to the place where now you can go play 18 holes? And those can be applied to your business and your leadership. So that's something I would encourage anyone to do just individually as a leader and encourage their teams to do. There's another thing that we do in our business, and I didn't really think it was actually that unique until I started to get feedback on it. So I, as the owner and president, I make time to meet with every employee, and I do it in small groups of like 2 to 5 people. And I do it every year, and we set up breakfasts and lunches and we go off site. This is not typically at the company. And there isn't a big agenda, but I have a notebook because I want to make sure I capture the feedback, and it is their time. We could talk about, their hobby of like training squirrels to water ski, right? If that's what they want to talk about. But also if they have ideas, they have complaints, they have concerns, they have questions, everything's on the table. You want to know more about me? You want to know about an initiative? Ask it. Let's talk about it. And I'm always prepared with some questions to get the conversation going if people aren't prepared. I didn't think that was very unique until my employees started to tell me so. They're talking to their spouses or partners or their friends and getting feedback that like those people aren't doing that with the owner of their business. And I understand that from a scale perspective may not be doable for, if you have 500 or 1,000 employees, that's going to be a little challenging, but you could find ways to rotate some of that interaction. And I think the point is to stay in contact with people who are in your business and let them guide the discussion. And I would encourage people to do that and do it regularly and to start right away. It does not need to be perfect. You do not even need to have an expectation on how that's going to go.
I think that's an amazing suggestion. I love that. And I bet it's a very small percentage of people that do that.
Well, that's the feedback I'm getting.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And it takes time. There's logistics, setting it up and going and spending the time and, but it is so worthwhile. I cannot even tell. And those are the best days. Those are like my most favorite days when I can go and sit down with our employees and hear what they have to say and what they want to talk about.
That's a great suggestion. I like that one a lot. Okay. I have one more question.
Yeah.
If you could go back when you first took over, and stepped into the business and give yourself some piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, so many things. The benefit, right? The benefit of experience. What do they say? Wisdom is wasted on the youth is wasted on the young, right? If only. I think probably what I would say is something that I have more recently come to realize and learn more about is I would tell myself, prepare to do everything imperfectly. I read something not long ago that talked about, how the perfection gets in the way of starting things or doing things, or, you actually do the thing and you complete whatever that was, but you're so focused on what went wrong that you don't even celebrate the things that went right. And how, if we can get over that you're already ahead. And I have thought a lot about that. And when I look at if I could go back, I wanted so badly to do everything right and do it all perfectly and make everybody proud and keep everybody happy. And, had this idea that as a leader, I'd show up and have answers and stuff. And the reality is absolutely not that. I've made tons of mistakes. I've said the wrong thing. I've chosen the wrong course. It's been messy, and you need to have some messy in order to really grow. And so I would tell myself, just be ready to do it imperfectly, and you will have so much more fun, and you will celebrate so much more, and you will start earlier and probably do things that you just never did because you didn't think it was perfectly ready. And perfectly imperfect is right where you need to be.
Perfectly imperfect. All these little sound bites we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving it.
It is good. It is good. Well, I think so many people wait until things are perfect or they have their, shit together. They never start, that they just never start. And then they look back 20 years later and like, oh man, I wish I would have done that. And then you got to just jump in and do it, figure it out, And
it's very freeing. You talk about wanting to grow a business or build a team or develop people, gosh, when you stop worrying about needing to have every piece put together to do those things, man, it's like we get to be human when we do this, and it's so freeing. So we got to get over the perfectionist thing or the idea of what a leader looks like or a CEO is. There really isn't an exact playbook for that. And so go do it your way. It doesn't need to be perfect.
Well, it sounds like you're doing an awesome job there. Claire, we appreciate your time. This has been amazing. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your lessons and wisdom with us.
Well, it's fun to share it with you, and thank you for having me.
Before we wrap, where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, learn more about Standard Heating and Air?
Yeah, you could certainly check out our social media or go to our website, right? standardheating.com. And really, if anyone wants to connect with me, they can find me on LinkedIn and send me a message. So I would love to connect with anyone who wants to talk more.
Awesome.
Love that.
Well, thank you again. This has been great. We really appreciate it. And thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.